2 days after the San Marino Grand Prix, the longest game in Major League Baseball history saw the Chicago White Sox defeat the Milwaukee Brewers 7-6 over 25 innings, taking 8 hours and 6 minutes in the process. On the same day, the Soviet Union announced that it would boycott the upcoming Los Angeles Olympics. The official reason given was that the organisers couldn't guarantee the athletes' safety and they expected to be harassed by US officials, but most believed it to be in revenge for the US-led boycott of the 1980 Moscow Games following the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Bulgaria, East Germany, Mongolia, Vietnam, Laos, Czechoslovakia, Afghanistan, Hungary and Poland all joined the boycott in the next few days. On the 13th of May, a fire began in a munitions depot at the Soviet naval base of Severomorsk near Murmansk. Over the next few days it would spread, until on May the 17th the munitions detonated in a colossal explosion, resulting in the deaths of 200 to 300 people. Severomorsk was a closed town and an important military base, so it wasn't until July that the news leaked out to the west of what had occurred. Rival clubs Liverpool and Everton won the First Division and the FA Cup respectively over the course of a week. It was Liverpool's third title on the trot and their 15th overall, and Everton's first FA Cup win since 1966. And on the day before the French Grand Prix, the British poet laureate Sir John Betjeman died. Betjeman had been famous for his TV appearances in which he expressed a fondness for Victorian architecture at a time when it was a bit unfashionable, and especially for the neo-Gothic St Pancras railway station in London, which he campaigned to save from demolition. When, in the mid-2000s, St Pancras was substantially renovated to provide a new terminal for Eurostar trains to Paris and Brussels, a statue of Sir John was unveiled in the new station hall with hat and briefcase, posed as if reading the departure boards. The French Grand Prix would be held at Dijon for the first time since 1981, with the circuit having held the 1982 Swiss Grand Prix, but plans to do the same in 1983 having fallen through. In the 2 weeks in Imola, several teams had made alterations to their cars. Brabham had a new turbocharger design from KKK, in the hope of ending their run of turbo failures. Williams had changed the geometry of the front suspension in an ongoing bid to get rid of the car's understeer. Ferrari had tweaked both front and back suspension, and McLaren had to fly in a fresh batch of engines from Porsche's base in Weissach after both drivers had failures in practice. Toleman, meanwhile, had their new car ready. The TG184 dispensed with the unconventional front-wing mounted radiator and double-deck rear wing that had characterised its predecessor, and there was a car each for Senna and Cecotto, now shod in Michelins. There was just one change in the entry, with Ozella back down to one car, though promising a second turbo for Gartner later in the year. Renault, meanwhile, were just hoping that their tradition of coming good at the French Grand Prix would hold, and none more so than Patrick Tambay, who'd had a pretty miserable season so far. Things seemed to be going well for them at first, and Tambay took advantage of a gap in traffic to top the times, before his turbocharger exploded and set his car on fire. Warwick also had a series of engine troubles on Friday morning and had to use the spare car with the cockpit that didn't really fit him, and was 7th at the end of the day. Between the two were De Angelis, Piquet, Rosberg and Mansell, and that was where they would line up on Sunday, because the heavens opened for the second session on Saturday, meaning those who did go out were over 20 seconds slower, almost a third of the dry lap time. This was great news for Tambay, less great for Andrea de Cesaris, who'd had Friday's time scrubbed after scrutineers found his fire extinguisher was empty. Sound familiar? And would therefore be missing out on Sunday. Of the rest, the Ferrari team was still in trouble. Winkelhock qualified well once again ahead of Lauda, while Senna and Cecotto put the new Tolemans 13th and 18th respectively. On Saturday night, Ligier announced that François Hinault, who'd qualified a very respectable 14th, was voluntarily withdrawing from his first home race in order to allow de Cesaris to start in 26th. Nobody believed them, even when Hinault himself gave a rather tight-lipped statement that it was totally his decision honest. Sunday was dry but cool and cloudy as the drivers lined up for the start, which once again proved a little messy, with Tambay's clutch slipping out and Piquet apparently anticipating the light by a couple of seconds, but lifting just in time for the lights to go green, dropping him well back down the order. The 26 cars thundered down to the first corner 4 abreast, with Tambay and De Angelis going in side by side, with the Renault emerging in the lead, and Mansell getting past Rosberg to go third behind his teammate. So it was Tambay, De Angelis, Mansell, Rosberg, Warwick and Piquet at the end of lap 1, with Prost, Alboreto, Winkelhock and Lauda making up the top 10. Tambay began to pull away a little from the two Lotai, who were having a great scrap over second place, while behind them Rosberg was dropping back and the McLarens moving up. Prost was first, moving past Piquet and gaining on Warwick, while Nelson now had Lauda bearing down on him too. Prost made short work of Warwick and rapidly left him behind, and before long was up behind Mansell, while Lauda was still stuck behind Warwick and Piquet, making a little three-car train, chased by Arnoux, who had also come up well. Nicky's job was made easier when Piquet suddenly slowed with yet another failed turbocharger on lap 12, and at the same time Beloff pulled off with a broken transmission. They joined Winkelhock, clutch, and Alliot, engine, who were already out. Nigel Mansell, meanwhile, was making a valiant attempt to keep Prost behind him, but eventually succumbed the lap after Piquet's retirement, and the next time round it was Lauda's turn to move up a spot, taking Warwick for 5th. Prost was now on De Angelis' tail, and moved up to 2nd after a couple of laps, so the lead was now between Tambay and Prost, 2 French drivers and the current and former occupants of the lead Renault seat, and they were starting to make their way through traffic in the shape of Ghinzani and Baldi. Tambay made a meal of passing the Azello, which allowed Prost to close right up and set fastest lap into the bargain, while just behind them Lauda had already disposed of Mansell and was now weaving about behind De Angelis looking for a way past. He tried to squeeze through as the pair lapped Ghinzani, but couldn't quite make it and had to settle for doing it the next time round. On lap 23, the leaders suddenly found themselves engulfed in smoke as Johnny Cecotto had a turbo blowout right in front of them, but it didn't put them off their game, and Tambay continued to hold off Prost as Lauda approached the pair. Then, a moment from Prost as one of his wheel bearings came loose, luckily for him on the last corner, and he was able to peel straight into the pits for a change, albeit a slow one as his team weren't remotely ready for him. He emerged nearly a full lap behind the leaders. If Tambay thought he might get a breather after that, he was mistaken, as Lauda closed right up as they lapped Boots and Arrows. On lap 30 of 79, Mansell went in for tyres, followed a few laps later by Arnoux, who'd got up to 4th, and Warwick. The lead pair, though, was still going at it hammer and tongs, Lauda putting a wheel on the dirt while lapping a reluctant Lafitte, but it didn't slow him at all, and as they came through a pack of traffic on the start-finish line, he had another go, and then again on the next lap. It was thrilling stuff, but Tambay was equal to the challenge and held the lead, until he ran wide, his brakes fading, and Lauda nipped through. The order at just over half distance then was Lauda, Tambay, Mansell, Rosberg, Warwick, De Angelis, with Prost now up to 7th already and soon passing the Lotus too. Tambay made his tyre stop on lap 44 without losing 2nd, but now 40 seconds down, and now all eyes were on Lauda, what would happen when he made his own stop. Tambay was flying on his new rubber, cutting lumps out of Lauda's lead as Cheever came in for a new rear wing after his own had collapsed on the main straight. Then it was Lauda's turn on lap 54, passing the stationary Alfa on his way in. A slowish 17-second stop saw Tambay retake the lead by some 11 seconds, but the TV cameras didn't see him rejoin. They were busy with the aftermath of an accident between Warwick and Sura. Derek had been racing with Nigel Mansell for 3rd place when the pair had come to lap the Ford-powered Arrows, and Warwick had tripped over it, putting both of them out of the race and vaulting the Renault into the catch fencing. A suspension rod poked through the cockpit wall, but luckily only inflicted some painful bruising on Derek's leg. Prost had to come in a second time with his wheel bearings still playing up, which dropped him back out of contention, but now it was Lauda's turn to push on new tyres, gaining at a second a lap and breaking the lap record in the process. When Tambay was balked by Ghinzani as he came to lap him at an inopportune moment, Lauda was on him in the flash. With no more planned stops, it was now a straight race between the two on the track, while Prost did a spot of lap record breaking himself as he tried to make the most of his ruined afternoon. Lauda got past Tambay at the end of lap 63 and pulled away, and that was it as a contest. Lauda came home for his 2nd win of the year and his 21st overall, almost 10 years to the day since his first Grand Prix win at Jarama for Ferrari. Patrick Tambay came home a safe 2nd, no doubt glad to finally stand on the podium again, but rueing how close he came to a win for his new employers, and Nigel Mansell took a satisfied 3rd place, with Arnoux a fairly anonymous 4th, De Angelis 5th, and Rosberg understeering his way to an unhappy 6th. The game Prost finished 7th after all his efforts. Martin Brundle finished 12th and might have done better if he hadn't made an extra pit stop after reading someone else's pit board by mistake, while Bootson's turbo expired on the last lap, but he was still classified 11th. So no points for Prost, but he remains top of the leaderboard, with Arnoux now joining Warwick in joint 3rd. Mansell gets his first point on the board to slot in 9th. The constructors' table, meanwhile, makes pretty grim reading for anyone who's not McLaren, with the Woking boys having as many points as the next 2 teams put together. Next up, though, is Monaco, a track which always has the capacity to spring a few surprises.